This podcast may contain discussions of graphic violence, unsettling themes, supernatural phenomena, and other topics that some listeners may find disturbing or triggering. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. The opinions expressed are simply those of the individual hosts and do not represent the profession of psychology or constitute professional advice.
Welcome to the Secret Passage podcast. I almost said welcome to the prosecutors because we were just talking about them. Welcome to the Secret Passage podcast. I'm Dana Vespoli.
And I'm Shannon Rogers.
And we are back for another episode. And today is Easter Sunday. So happy Easter, everybody. I mean, of course, it'll be after Easter when you hear this, but just know that we are wishing everyone a happy Easter today. And Shannon.
Yes.
By any chance, have you gone down any interesting secret passages this past week?
I don't know if this is interesting, but my family was visiting. My sister-in-law, brother-in-law, their daughter, and then their two friends and their daughter. And so we got to do the touristy thing on Friday. We took the ferry to San Francisco and went to the ferry building and walked around. They went to Chinatown. But it was so fun because there's such good chemistry between all of us, and we laugh a lot. But I just wanted to share a joke. That's my secret passage. It's Tim's joke. He used to. Did I tell you? I think I did. So you have to play along with me.
Yes, I will.
He used to be able to use Johnny Depp in this joke, but now he's changed it. He's updated it to Timothy Chalamet because it doesn't really work anymore with Johnny Depp. But I had forgotten all about it. Mm-hmm. And when he told it to me, I was just, for whatever reason, it just made me laugh really hard. I don't know if anybody will think this is funny, but here we go. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Timothy Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet who?
Ooh, Timothy Chalamet is so hot. So stupid.
Do you think Timothy Chalamet is hot?
I kind of do. He kind of has a two-face. Like you look at him from one angle and he's like really good looking, and then from another angle, not so good looking. But I do think he's good looking. Do you?
He's pretty.
Yeah, he's pretty.
Yeah, I can't look at him without seeing an elf.
Yeah.
He's elfin. Have you seen, there was a post a while back, and it's like, those like curved up, like Renaissance looking shoes.
Yes.
And someone's like, why is it that every time I see Timothy Chalamet, I feel like he should be wearing these?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think of an elf or a child because he's so much younger than I am. But
yeah, but he
looks like a kid,
and he looks like you could break him in half, like you could pick him up with one hand. He's just so thin, but yeah, he's pretty.
Yeah. How about you? Did you go down any secret passages?
Oh, let me think here. Here's something. I started, so funny enough, because I almost said prosecutors podcast. I'm a big fan of Brett and Alice and the prosecutors podcast, and they have started they say they joke and say it's a 20-part, 30-part, 15-part. They just don't know how many episodes it's going to be because they're just diving in so deep to the West Memphis 3 case, which is one of my, I feel weird saying favorite cases. It's not my favorite, but it's so
compelling.
It's compelling. There's so much in it. It's incredibly tragic. There are still folks who believe that Damian Eccles, Jesse Miskelly, and Jason Baldwin murdered the 3 young boys, Stevie Branch.
Do you know I know nothing about that case?
I think it's wild that you know nothing about that case. Chris Byers is the other one. And then
Okay, Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore.
Michael Moore. And Michael Moore should be the one that I remember,
I know.
because Michael Moore, the documentary filmmaker. But they're diving so deep into it, and it's horrifying what happened to these three little boys. I mean, so you must have remembered when, like, Eddie Vedder and all these folks like went and were working hard to free the West Memphis Three, and believed that, the investigation was botched, et cetera, et cetera. And then not that long ago, the three of them did an Alford plea. They're out of prison. It was Damien Eccles was in like solitary confinement for a lot of it, and all that kind of thing. But anyway, they're doing a major deep dive, and I listen to podcasts when I'm driving. And so I love the way they cover things, because they
I do
cover
too.
things from a legal perspective as well.
Yeah.
And the way that they really do such detailed investigative work is just good. It's really
Okay.
good. And it may go on forever.
I'll listen. I'll listen to it. I realize the reason I haven't followed it is because I have a really hard time following cases where people have been, maybe innocent and have been sentenced and imprisoned. I have such a hard time with that. I avoid it like
Why?
colds. I don't, that's like one of my worst nightmares is to just
Oh,
fall
yeah.
into the system, and then just be engulfed by it and then thrown in the slammer when I'm totally innocent. That just seems like your whole life is taken away from you. It's so unfair and unjust.
No,
Ah!
Poochie, you are going to leave the children alone. He gets so angry when kids are having fun.
No fun will be had by children.
He's like the get off my lawn, angry old man neighbor. Yeah, I get that. But you know what they needed with those Damien Eccles and everyone needed, and what Adnan Said needed was Jose Baez, because if he can get fucking Casey Anthony off the hook, he
Everybody
surely
needs
can
Jose
get
Baez.
innocent people off the hook. If they're innocent, like, we don't know,
I
you
know.
know. I'm inclined to believe that. Well, I'll know more, because I'll tell you something. Brett and Alice like pulled up some stuff that I didn't even know in their research. So if you want to hear that case, or I don't, it's a case I won't touch with a 10-foot pole. In the same way I won't touch Adnan Said and Heyman Lee with the 10-foot pole. I can't go there. It's just there's just so much. It's so dense, and it's been done so well by everyone else,
Yeah. Yeah.
Poochie, you've got to stop. You're going to irritate the listeners, and they're not going to like you.
We're going to have to edit you out, bad boy.
Yes, I don't want the editor to hate me because of my pug. But anyway, so that was my secret passage.
Very cool.
We're going in an interesting direction today. We needed I guess a palate cleanser after our Gabriel Fernandez episode, because it was just so dark and tragic, but an incredibly necessary case to discuss, because we kind of need to keep his name alive, and his memory alive just because he was an innocent little boy, but also for all the children out there that are falling through the cracks in the system. But today, we are talking about Jayne Mansfield. I don't know if any of you listeners are familiar with that name. She was a blonde bombshell of the 1950s, and lest you think that there can't possibly be anything relevant in discussing her now in 2025, I would say she is, first of all, fucking fascinating. just her life was so wild and chaotic and crazy, and there's so much about her that's like steeped in this kind of in the supernatural. You know, she was ahead of her time as far as the idea of branding and marketing is concerned, and she was a walking contradiction. But she was, in a lot of ways, an influencer before influencers. So, yeah, with that, Shannon, do you know much about Jayne Mansfield? Had you heard about her before I brought her up as a possible subject?
Well, I think we had talked about her in our 20s,
Yeah.
and you had known a lot about her, and that's my only exposure to Jayne Mansfield. I mean, I knew about how she died. I know she's Mariska Hargitay's mom, and I love Mariska Hargitay because I love Law and Order Special Victims Unit.
Yes.
But no, I'm not a person. I realized this weekend with our guests, one of our guests, Jimena, was reading the biography of Lisa Marie Presley, and I was like, it's so interesting. I'm not at all interested in memoirs and biographies. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
therapist, and so I'm always with people, talking about their histories and their lives, and I don't really tend to gravitate toward celebrities and get interested in their lives in any way. So it's cool to talk. I want to learn more about her today. So I'm going to be like in the role of person being informed about her life and
Yeah, and
ask.
feel free
Yeah.
to ask any questions too. So we can't have a conversation about Jayne Mansfield without first mentioning or bringing up Marilyn Monroe, which is something that Jayne Mansfield would have fucking hated, bringing up Marilyn Monroe, because Jayne was referred to as like the poor man's Marilyn Monroe. And so little backstory on Jayne. She was born in 1933. I'm not going to get too into like her whole life story because only where it's relevant. She was born in 1933. She was born in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, grew up in Texas, was a good student, grew up in a nice middle class home. I mean, her upbringing was a vastly different than Marilyn Monroe's. Marilyn Monroe was, had a extremely mentally ill mother, was, put into the foster care system, suffered in foster care, was molested, and terrible things happened to her. Dropped out of high school at the age of 16 to get married. All of that. Jayne, on the other hand, had a very devoted mother and stepfather. Her real father died when she was 3 years old, and she actually saw it happen. He died of a heart attack, and that must have been pretty traumatic. Even though she was really young, at 3, you can, I mean, I think you can. That can inform a lot of kind of how things go for you. But her father slumped over the wheel when he was driving her mother and her somewhere, and the mom had to like grab the wheel and veer off, and he was dead, and Jayne was in the back seat. But her stepfather was very devoted, and she grew up in a nice middle class home, had a couple good girlfriends. She was not popular in high school. She had her little core group of friends, but she wasn't like a cheerleader or anything like that. She played violin pretty well, got good grades, was a really dutiful daughter by all accounts, did what she was told, and loved movies and movie stars and loved attention. She always loved attention and was sort of like cheeky and mugging for, for attention from her parents and their friends and things like that. But she ended up, interestingly enough, being the dutiful daughter, she ended up pregnant when she was in high school. I believe it's around senior year, to a man named. Oh, I should say, she was born Vera Jane Palmer. That is her. That was her legal name, Jayne being her middle name. And her boyfriend that she got pregnant by was Paul Mansfield. So that's where the Mansfield comes from. And she, despite getting pregnant, finished high school and got her diploma. And her parents weren't thrilled about it, but they went ahead and they helped host a wedding. And she and Paul were married. She attended University of Texas, I think at Austin. So she kind of just, despite being a teenage pregnant, which feels like a very modern kind of thing. Even back then, she was sort of shrugging off a lot of convention of the time and didn't let it hold her back.
Yeah. Like,
And this
so
is a theme.
robust. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
This is a theme with her. Paul was drafted, and she had been on him like let's go to Hollywood. Let's go to Hollywood. I want to be an actress. I want to be an actress. And he had said, hey, just wait. I'm going off to war, and I promise when we get back. By the way, she had a habit. The men she actually married were solid dudes. Like, Paul was a solid dude. He was, he kept his word. She had a daughter named Jayne Marie. And so Jayne Mansfield was, and during the time, like, they moved, I should say, when he was, they moved to Georgia, and he was going through training and all that kind of thing with the Army. And she would, like, sunbathe in a bikini out in front of everybody. Like, she loved attention. This girl loved attention. And she had this ridiculous body. She had a 40-inch bust, a teeny tiny waist. I mean, she was built like a Barbie doll, basically. And she loved attention, and so she would put it on display. She would, like, exercise and all that. And Paul was getting some kind of harsh words from the higher ups, like, hey man, you gotta rein your chick in. She's distracting people. And eventually he fulfilled his word, and they moved to Los Angeles. And she kind of did the silly thing of, like, walking in and saying, hey, my name is Jayne Mansfield and I want to be a movie star, to, like, one of the studios. And things didn't start out easily. She did a lot of, like, beauty contests and things like that. Paul eventually left because he was like, I don't want this life. He was, like, trying to get her to move back. And she had promised originally, like, if nothing happens in 6 months, I promise I'll move back. She never had any intention of that.
Did he take the kid with him?
Nope.
Or did
Nope.
Oh, so she was like single mom in it?
She was a fucking single mother in the 1950s, which is interesting. And she would take Jayne Marie on dates with her, because she'd go out on dates and stuff. She and Paul split, and she'd go out on dates. She was trying really hard. She got some bit parts. And eventually, they had her bleach her hair. And this is around the time Marilyn Monroe was having arguments with 20th Century Fox, because she was a difficult person to have on set. She had a lot of challenges and was a pain in the ass to a lot of the studios. And so they were kind of grooming Jayne to fill her shoes a little bit, which, if we all know that no one was going to fill Marilyn Monroe's shoes. So Jayne Mansfield set about becoming a star, even though she was divorced and a single mother. She wasn't going to let anything stand in the way. And she bleached her hair. She practiced this, like, weird little girl voice, that was popular at the time, with the quote unquote dumb blondes. She fully took on that dumb blonde image. She's an interesting contrast with Marilyn Monroe, because one of the things that, when I think about Marilyn Monroe, I think about this ethereal looking, kind of beautiful, and there's something about Marilyn that was, like, almost translucent. You, like, look at her and she seems vulnerable.
Yes.
And a big part of her appeal with a lot of fans was that there was this feeling like you wanted to protect her. She seemed like someone that needed to be taken care of.
You know what it makes me think of?
What?
it's like when I used to teach yoga, I used to say something like, when you open your eyes, like from meditating, have a passive gaze where you're letting things come into you, like if the light come in versus staring out from your eyes, like active
Yes.
gaze. I feel like Marilyn Monroe has like the passive gaze. Like you look at her and she looks like gauzy and kind of, right? Like she's just,
Yes.
and then Jayne Mansfield has that active, like, hello, I'm looking at you
Oh,
kind of.
Jayne has a fixed
Yes.
expression. Jayne was like where Marilyn feels vulnerable. Jayne never felt vulnerable to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And she was this kind of dynamic weirdo. Jayne was weird. And I don't say that in a mean way. She was just it's where Marilyn was frustrated and victimized by Hollywood. Jayne was like, "Oh, being a dumb blonde's going to make me famous? Bring it. I'll
Yeah.
be the dumbest blonde there is. What's that? Big boobs and a tiny waist? Well, I've got the biggest fucking tits you've ever seen." Like
Yeah.
she was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to use it
Yeah.
to get rich and famous."
Yeah. I'm going to
Which
work it.
yeah, which reflects a lot of today. That kind of
Totally.
attitude.
And it's not like cynical. It's not like, it feels very earnest with her. I mean, from what I know
She
of
was
her.
shrewd. Yeah,
Yes.
she didn't take it on like
Yeah.
in the way that you could say that Monroe did. Like Monroe was like, I don't want you to think of me as stupid. I don't want to be seen this way. Jayne was like, I know I'm not stupid,
Ah, got it.
but I'll
Yeah.
play stupid. I'm smart enough to know this. She had I'm not going to say that she didn't, because I think of eventually that her downfall was not being able to separate the personal from the public. I think she had fun with it. I don't think that Marilyn ever had fun. But also Marilyn had such a horrible start to life, whereas Jayne had a very grounded start to life. So yeah, Jayne didn't need you to she didn't need you to think she just wanted you to see her as a star. And it didn't matter how she got there. She was going to fucking get there. So it worked. I mean, she worked with a manager who helped her devise some publicity stunts, and then she took the fucking ball and she ran with it for the rest of her life, clear up until the day she died. She was all about finding ways and gimmicks to get herself out there. She went to a premiere of a movie called Underwater, and she went there and she dove into the pool and then was like, oops, my bathing suit top came off. And then all the press went in there. She made front page of the papers. And this is just something that she did. There's that iconic image of her leaning over and smiling at the camera, and Sophia Loren is like side-eyeing her.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that.
Yeah, and that was, she knew what she was doing. She also made a point of like fucking moving her boobs so that you saw it pop out. She really was good at being the butt of a joke and setting you up to make her the butt of the joke.
Oh,
Like
that's
that's
interesting.
what she did. And she was strategic. So that's how things went. And there's this incredible book. There's this incredible book. It might be the best book ever written about Jayne Mansfield, and it's called Jayne Mansfield in the American 50s. And I read that book ages ago, and it was so interesting. I think I told you about this. I read that book when I was really young because I had this fascination. With Marilyn Monroe first, being a little like a latchkey kid, and just the TV was my babysitter for many years. And so old movies would come on, and I remember seeing The Prince and the Showgirl with Marilyn Monroe, and there was just such an appeal because she seemed so vulnerable, and I was a little kid who also felt lonely and vulnerable. I just latched onto her and read books about her and researched her and stuff, and then came across Jayne Mansfield, and I was like, what the fuck is this? It's like, what is this creature? I was a little kid, but here was this blonde, grown, kind of aggressive woman. There's an aggressiveness to Jayne that I admire now. But she was like a caricature. She had a big pink mansion that she called the Pink Palace. She had a heart-shaped pool, heart-shaped bathtubs, pink carpet, pink fur everywhere, stuffed animals everywhere.
Wow.
She was so camp. You
Yeah.
know, there was definitely a camp quality, and it's not surprising that she became such an icon to a lot of drag queens and drag culture, because she was a caricature of a woman. She was a woman, but she exaggerated herself in such a way. It's like she was satirizing. She was a satire of the dumb blonde.
Do you think there was any of her in that? Do you think she liked pink? I mean, I would love to live in a house with pink carpets and pink bathtub. You know, but do you think there was anything like her as a person in that?
There's no way to know.
Yeah, there's no
And
information
that
about.
also reflects so much of when I think about the Kardashians. And it's like, who is Kim really?
Right. Yeah.
Who are these people? We see Keeping Up with the Kardashians. So much of it is staged. It
Yeah.
has to be. You know, but
There's an invulnerability, right? There's no the curtain doesn't come down.
it doesn't. And it's a case of, I think that she became a victim of her own kind of machinations. You know, she got lost. She got lost in it, is the impression I have. Like Martha Saxton in the book, Jayne Mansfield in the American 50s, says that only the 50s could have produced Jayne. That's what she contends. Because Jayne wanted so badly to believe in this idea of family and being a wife and a mother, and she would spout it out, like women should attend to their children's needs, children come first, and to their husbands. Yet she marries Mr. Universe, and leaves her kids for days and weeks on at a time to go and pursue her goals. In a lot of ways, she was very much the can-do feminism that came later. Like she was living it. She was a career woman. She was the breadwinner. She was far wealthier than Mickey Hargitay, far more famous than who came next. Matt Cimber was a producer. And she would defy their instructions or orders. Not that they really ordered her around. She sought advice and kind of mentorship from Matt Cimber, but then completely ignored it and went with what she wanted to do. And so she was at odds with what she claimed to believe and was trying to embody. So she was very contradictory. So there was also it's so funny because there was this, what's the word I'm looking for? This idea of the ideal woman in the 1950s as being subservient, as being shapely and blonde, but innocent. Like there was the hypocrisy that was impossible to fulfill for women during that period of time. Look like this, but don't be slutty. Right? Look like this, but don't be slutty. Sexy, like sexuality is something that you blush thinking about it as a woman. There's all these expectations for women, and Jayne weaponized her overly sexualized image as a form of personal agency. She was going to use it, right? She wasn't going to be victimized by it. She was going to use it to get ahead. And so she was challenging these conservative 1950s norms by, I'm not going to say embracing her sexuality, because she would still say things like, women need to be chaste, women need to be this, as she's like losing her bikini top, whoops, in a swimming pool. She was very exhibitionistic, but pretended like she wasn't. So it's as though she understood the hypocrisy of the time and was like winking, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the stuff she did could only work, it's like a little peekaboo, like
Yeah.
it could only work in those times. Like nowadays, a person could jump into a pool and they're naked and it would be nothing, like,
Well, nowadays Kim Kardashian has a fucking sex tape.
right, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
But she could play with those tensions in a way, and now the tensions don't even exist.
well, and what's so interesting is you see the downfall.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't accept the times. She had mastered this kind of satire of the 50s, and as she got into the 60s, it didn't work. And she became grotesque and bizarre, like more bizarre, like the kittenish, acting shy about it. It didn't work because with the 60s came, this frankness with women, and that kind of ridiculous, Jayne walks by with her figure and milk jugs explode, and steam comes out of men's ears and all that kind of thing. That was gone. And she couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah.
So looking at her through that kind of feminist lens, and through this lens of the politics of today and the, how do I put this, the way that the media is today. It's so interesting because there's something that is so progressive about the way she operated during that time. And it would be interesting to see how she would operate now. Like, she would probably love social media. She wouldn't have needed a publicist or anything, because she would be her own machine with things like Instagram, TikTok. She probably would have been a wizard
Yeah. No,
today,
yeah.
and used what she could to advance herself, because she was nothing if not ambitious. She was indefatigable. Like, this woman didn't sleep. And that's something that comes up in Martha Saxton's book as well, because Martha Saxton looks at her through a feminist lens, and all the things that are just so kind of ahead of her time in one way and incredibly anachronistic in another. Like, she was ahead of her time, but she couldn't change with the times at the same time in terms of her own brand.
It's so interesting. It makes me think of like the trajectory of Betty Draper in Mad Men. Like when the time, she was sort of caught in this. So I'm thinking about Jayne Mansfield.
Yes.
She was sort of caught in this moment of. I think you can more quickly redefine yourself in today's times, or you can find some kind of niche. But like, she was stuck in her image, her 50s kind of coquettish like image. And then you have like the 70s, 60s and 70s with people, right, like burning their bras and, all that. And you'd mentioned that, right? Like, she's bumping up against the bra burning times. And
Yes.
she there wasn't enough time for her to become like a cult figure. Time has to pass, right, before people can start to embrace her as like a cult figure. I know that, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
So right. It's like she had nowhere to go, really.
And she couldn't relax. I mean, I think her own kind of neurosis got in the way as well. Is this fear that she doesn't have time to take a break, to slow down and re-examine what it is that she wants for herself.
Like, could she? But once you're so embracing of a certain it is hard to sort of right. Yeah, I mean, if she was more flexible, she might have been able to do it in some graceful way. Um, but again, I also it brings to mind like just generational stuff. Like I wonder if she just didn't want to, or if she didn't know how. But yeah, or if nobody would have accepted it. Like, would have the people of the time accepted her if she tried to revamp her image and go more with the times?
Yeah, she would sort of she with Matt Cimber, who was her producer husband. So there was Paul Mansfield. She was married to that relationship ended. He moved back to Texas, all that kind of thing. And then there was Mickey Hargitay, who was like the former Mr. Universe. And you almost see this. I mean, what a Mickey, who is Mariska Hargitay's father, he genuinely loved Jayne, like to the point where he was very like much a simp with her, like just but like a salt of the earth dude. Like he built the fucking Pink Palace. Like he with his own two
Wow.
hands made the heart-shaped pool. He built the fireplaces, like did all of this stuff. I mean, the guy was an incredible craftsman. He would make this stuff. But he was also he loved her so much. I don't know that Jayne loved any of the men she was with. I think she was always constructing what would look good.
It's so interesting, right? That
Yeah.
people might not see her as a feminist character, but
Yeah.
she's so focused on her career and straddling, being a parent and doing the career. But on the outside, it just looks like, right, she's like this airheaded blonde. So she was, so in a way, do you think that she was mostly driven by her career and not by
Yes.
her relationships with men? Yeah.
Just ambitious. She had a complicated relationship with her mother, and there's one part in the book that stood out to me. Her mom, I hate to throw this word around because I know it's overused. Her mom came off like a narcissist.
Uh-huh. That makes sense. I mean, that would make a lot
And
of sense.
yeah, it it it, it almost explains a little bit of maybe Jane's, I'm not going to say drive, maybe some of her drive, but also her own relationships with other people and
With
men
women.
and
Like,
women.
yeah,
I
because
don't
she's,
know that she had really any female friends. Just every relationship was, it seems to me, one of utility. Not because I don't think that she was capable of getting along or being fun and all that, but I think that that is just how driven and ambitious she was. That unless there was some utility, it just didn't make sense to hold on to any real relationships. And her mother, there's an exchange where it's Christmas time at the Pink Palace, and Jayne's mother opens up a gift from Jayne, and it's a mink coat, and Vera says something to the effect of, "Ah, but Janie, you know I wanted a full length mink coat." And then Jayne goes, "I know, Mama. You'll get your full length mink coat." Like she gets a mink coat from her
wow.
daughter, who's a rich, famous, movie star, and her first thing that she does is complain.
Ugh. Ugh.
And there was so much pressure put on Jayne when she was a young girl that you see her both trying to fulfill what her mother's expectations are of her,
Perfect
while at the
daughter.
same time rebelling and going and having sex and getting knocked up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that straddling of two different directions, and then that they then sort of like ultimately, as time goes by, it reaches like terminal velocity, and she dies in this really crazy, grotesque, horrifying, but also so on brand for her way. You know, even the
Yeah.
way she died was on brand for
Yeah.
her. So that just brings to mind there was never going to be a relationship that was ever going to work for her, because she also had these kind of contradictory expectations of these men. You know, she wanted Mickey to do what she wanted him to do, but she also wanted him to take charge, but she would never do well in a relationship where the man is taking charge. So she is just so fascinating. And then you wonder about a grown woman with a, so she claimed to have an IQ of 163. So she would also come out with these kind of very contradictory things. Like she would play the dumb blonde, insist that her IQ was 163. I don't think it was 163, but I do believe she did have a pretty high IQ. Spoke multiple languages, did incredibly well in high school and in college. Just found these incredibly shrewd ways to make money. She came up with the idea to furnish the Pink Palace for free by doing autograph signings at these furniture stores in exchange for furniture. So she furnished her whole house for free by signing autographs. It's just her negotiating these things.
Wow. I know.
But she lived in a fucking pink house with heart-shaped everything and stuffed animals on display.
It's so childlike, you know.
It is. And that's a
Little
thing where
girl.
like when you're like, did she really like pink? Did she really like that? I don't know. Maybe not. And then she decided she did. Like she, you know, bought a ticket to her own ride,
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of.
Well, yeah, it's all a performance, or maybe not. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah, we'll never know, you know. So moving on with this, things started to fizzle out for her because she was oversaturating the news, the media with her image constantly. There was always something showing up here. Her dress is falling down. Her top is falling off. She did this publicity stunt. She insisted it wasn't, but I want to say you can almost be sure that it did happen, a publicity stunt where her boat capsized and she and Mickey were stuck out in the water, sunburnt and all that kind of thing. And then they had to go to the hospital and all that. But people were just like, no, that. It looks like her publicity stunt kind of went awry. So she was bugging people. Her movies weren't doing great. To finish out her contract, they were sending her overseas to do movies overseas, which was seen as less, you know, just not less than, like
right.
it was a sign that your career was not going well. So she was like going to Europe to shoot these movies, like The Sheriff of Fractured Jaw and The Loves of Hercules and things like that. And then she started to do these like supper club engagements where she would perform and sing and all that with like a burlesque type thing all over the place. And another sign that things weren't going great. And her debts were mounting because she's got 5 children and this huge mansion and lawsuits that were coming in and all that. Things were not going great for her. And she started to drink a lot. When her career was doing badly and she was anxious, she started to drink a lot and started to look very bloated. That's another thing. She really went against convention. I mean, you know, you hear about these abortions and stuff that like Marilyn Monroe had and other Hollywood actresses because being a mother was not going to help their career. And Jayne sort of defiantly had 5 kids.
Yeah.
She just was like, she just would, I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't doubt she loved the children she had, but they were a lot of work, you know, and she would have to leave for weeks on end. She would bring her kids with her whenever she could.
Yeah, it's a lot to take on when the kids have fathers too. I mean, I imagine they saw their fathers.
Yeah, so Jane Marie, I think, had it the hardest. She was the oldest child, and she was assigned this role of she was expected to kind of mother her mother. And Jane also struggled with aging, so she would make Jane Marie dress younger than she was, and all that, and wasn't big on school because she wanted to be able to, if she was going to travel, she wanted her kids with her. So there was a lot that was not great, you know,
Yeah,
but they all turned out okay
I
by
know.
all accounts. I mean, obviously, Mariska, incredibly successful actress, and ironically has, you know, her image is one of this very together, serious, beloved television character. Like Olivia Benson and Elliot Stabler were like two of my favorite characters on television because they were just so together, so caring, so on top of shit and brave and tough.
Yes.
It's really interesting
Well, it's funny
because
because I went back and started. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yo, no, go ahead.
Well, I went back and started watching Law and Order SVU from the beginning, and I had forgotten that the feminist themes in it at the outset, and that Olivia Benson was kind of like hold like her character kind of really holds that piece in the show in terms of violence and sexual violence against women. It's really pronounced in the early episodes, the politics and the kind of the feminism.
Yeah,
So it's interesting to go back and see that.
yeah, she is the champion of women's rights and just anyone who is oppressed in any way. She is this symbol of strength and justice and power, like real power. So Jane had a lot of problems, and things came to a head when she started dating her attorney Sam Brody. So her relationship with Matt Simber fell apart. Her relationship with Mickey fell apart because she was just like she was you know, she cheated on these guys and all that. And with Mickey, he just wasn't, he was too subservient to her, even though she wasn't going to accept any kind of authority
Right.
from him.
Yeah.
And eventually she married Matt Simber. That relationship didn't work out. And then she started dating Sam Brody, this attorney that was going to help her in her custody case with her children. You know, because Mickey wanted his 3 kids, Matt wanted his son. Jane, Paul Mansfield wasn't. I don't know what Paul Mansfield's deal was with Jane Marie. I don't know if he ever had a relationship with her. I know that Mickey was good to Jane Marie. So I'm not really clear on if Mickey was also appealing to holding on to Jane Marie or not. But Jane started dating Sam Brody, who was an abusive asshole. And Sam, Jane, from what Martha Saxton puts forth in her book, it seems that Jane would associate the physical abuse with Sam being masculine. So it was Jane's kind of dealing with toxic masculinity, I guess. And but she was also drunk. You know, she was an alcoholic and would show up to shows with like bruises and apparently Jane didn't want to stay with Sam, but Sam was sort of leveraging what he could do as far as the custody stuff with her children against her to kind of keep her there. And he was very obsessed with her and all of that. So things were not going well, and she was looking, her supper show, her supper club engagements were kind of ridiculous, where she was still kind of simpering and doing the dumb blonde peekaboo type thing, and her like tassels and sequins and all that, and just being kind of ridiculous, and wearing bows in her hair, like again showing the kind of anachronistic thing that was happening, becoming this sort of grotesque caricature. And then, by the way, her birthday was yesterday, April 19th. So, and then in June of 1967, she was doing at the Gus Stevens Supper Club. She was doing a show, and then she and Sam Brody, who was with her, were gonna get a ride from the club owner's son-in-law, I think, or an employee, to drive her to Mississippi to do like a morning show to promote another gig she had coming up. And so she got all the kids in the back seat of the car. Or no, actually the kids were in the front seat of the car, and she and Sam were in the back with her chihuahuas. By the way, she had like a mountain, a virtual farm. She had so many dogs.
Aw.
Like chihuahuas. She seemed very especially fond of chihuahuas, and she would just take them everywhere with her. I don't know how good of a pet owner she was, if we're going to be honest. Like, when she was in Europe at one point, 3 of her dogs were quarantined, so she went and got some more. Like you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Like it was a little weird, little sketchy. I think they were like security blankets to her, And so she had a couple of her dogs with her, and they leave the club like at midnight, and they stop off at a gas station, and she does the thing that may have saved Mariska Hargitay's life, because we may not have Mariska Hargitay on SVU if this had happened, along with her 2 other sons, or two sons. She puts them in the back seat, and they lay on the floor and fall asleep, and she's in the front now with Sam and the driver. And in Biloxi, Mississippi, at like 2:27 in the morning, the car crashes into a truck. And the car is going crazy fast, like way faster than it should be going. And the truck up ahead had slowed down because I think there was the mosquito spraying truck in front of it. So it slowed down. So Jayne's car drives, and it goes so fast, like underneath almost the back of this big truck, and the roof of the car is like peeled back like a sardine can. Oof. And Jayne and Sam Brody and the driver Ronnie Harrison all die on impact, and the children survive with honestly minimal injuries.
Wow.
And Jayne, so there's been this misconception forever that Jayne was decapitated in the accident. She was not decapitated. She suffered from an avulsion. So like basically the top part of her head was sheared off, like almost like scalped, and brain matter and all that kind of stuff. Sorry to be gross, but like that's and then her wig, she was wearing wigs back then. Her wig flew off, and so it could be that when some press people showed up, they saw the wig and thought it was her head,
Yeah.
But
probably.
it was the top of her head that came off, and the children were okay. And that was so a little bit of interesting lore around the accident, which has been covered so many times. I mean, the movie, the Cronenberg movie Crash, makes references the Jayne Mansfield accident in the movie. And also the reason why it happened. So here's where the supernatural stuff comes in.
I had never heard about this until you told me.
The supernatural stuff?
Yeah.
With Anton LaVey?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So there are pictures of Jayne and Anton LaVey him, I want to say, I don't know if it's at her pink palace, but like there's pictures of them together. There's pictures of her, like it looks like she's drinking out of some sort of like ceremonial cup or something like that. And the rumor was that Jayne was part of the Church of Satan, that she wanted to be like a high priestess in Anton LaVey's church, and that Sam Brody, being the punk ass that he was ridiculing Anton LaVey to his face, messing with ceremonial candles that he shouldn't have been, and that Anton LaVey put a curse on Sam Brody. And the problem was that Jayne and her kids and Ronnie Harrison were all with Sam when the curse basically took place, which was the accident. And this is what Carla LaVey, his daughter, Anton's daughter, was talking about that in this interview with Joan Rivers in the 90s that I found on YouTube. There's so much on YouTube for anybody that is interested in Jayne Mansfield. The video I sent to you, The Wild Wild World of Jayne Mansfield, is just so bizarre. It's such a relic.
I want to watch that.
It's so weird. And you get to have this sort of like bizarre tour of the Pink Palace, like after Jayne died. Like Mickey Hargitay is there looking very somber with Miklos and Zoltan, his two sons, with her. And they're like walking around in like suits and all that. And that's how The Wild Wild World of Jayne Mansfield ends. Because originally it was her going, I think this was something that Matt Simber like put in, was like trying to help her with her career, and was like, oh, well, how about a movie where you go to all these different kind of hot spots in Europe and talk about them. And so that's what it is. It's this tour of Rome and Paris and various other places, and it's her voice narrating, and she's being very like coquettish, which is, again, comes off really weird because it's the 60s. And you sort of see that the times have changed, but she hasn't. And she's like trying to do the twist and stuff. And then she's like talking about, oh my goodness. And sometimes when I'm walking down the street in Rome, these men look at me and they whistle and I don't understand, like that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden it ends with this sound of a crash, which already is morbid. And then it cuts to the Pink Palace and Mickey arriving and just walking through it. And then this other narrator's voice talking about how sad it is that she's dead and these are her boys and they're so sad and Mickey's sad and everyone is sad. And you're like, this is a huge like shift.
Yeah, it was like a travelogue and now it's a, right?
And yeah, it's like his travelogue and then she died. And it is sad.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yes.
When I can watch this interview, but I'm curious, when they interview Anton LaVey's daughter, when she's talking about the curse, does she totally buy into the idea that that was his doing? Or is she sort of saying,
No.
Okay.
So then I think she did.
Okay.
Now, Jordan Peterson interviews her on his podcast.
Oh, wow.
She is no longer a part of that. She denounces it, all that kind of thing. If I recall correctly, please don't forgive me if I'm totally misremembering. But I think the whole point of her going on the Jordan Peterson podcast was to talk about how, that none of it was real. That Anton LaVey, that like this wasn't like,
right.
He wasn't really like a devil worshiper. This was this kind of, I don't know, like a reaction to the times or something. I'm not really clear.
Like he was just practicing, like he was just doing the magic with a K thing, or
yeah, he's like a hedonist. He was just into, it's. I'd have to go back and listen to it again, but she really talks about like being his daughter and what that was like, and that he was a narcissist, like you would totally imagine, and all that kind of thing. And she's not into it at all.
Well, that's the thing about the Satanic Bible. I had a boyfriend who was reading that. Should have been a red flag for me. But I read part of it, and it is like that. It's about like it's sort of it's like getting what you want. Like being focused on your pleasure, your success, something like that. Like it had that feel of, I'm like, wow, is it a self-help book? No, it's sort of like, but hedonism, pleasure, but not like worshiping Satan. That's not what I got from the parts that I read.
Yeah, that tends to be it's so interesting though too, because and I'm sure this is probably what led Carla, I think that's her name. Yeah, Carla, out of it, is the recognition that when you follow something like that through, hedonism, self-pleasure, self-aggrandizing, all that, it, it's it's really empty,
Yeah.
you know? Like just being about yourself and your own pleasure
Yeah.
it's really empty. And
Like self-interest.
that self-interest is
Yeah.
just, yeah, like which isn't to say that pleasure in and of itself isn't, it's not a bad thing. I'm sure people are listening to this going, okay, porn actress. Okay, sex industry. Well, therein lies the rub, right?
Yeah.
Therein lies the massive conflict where peace comes from. And I think the mistake is to just constantly be in search of happiness, and really the real benefit is seeking peace. And
Yeah.
peace can often come from service, being of service to others.
Right, right. Check this out. I
Yeah.
looked it up on Grok. Okay,
Okay.
so it espouses, like social Darwinism. That's why I said the thing about self-help book. It seemed like, I read a lot of corporate self-help. I thought for a while I went through this phase where I was reading a lot of corporate self-help, and it's got that like go get 'em, like
Yeah.
have a morning ritual, and and it helped a lot. It's very paternal. I felt like it was very like much like a father, speaking to you about, wake up and work hard and all that stuff. And so it's a little bit like that. I mean, so it says the text promotes a view of society where the strong thrive and weakness is not rewarded. It values competence, creativity, and personal achievement. The Satanic Bible does not advocate for violence, human sacrifice, or illegal acts, despite common misconceptions. It frames Satanism as a life-affirming atheistic philosophy that celebrates human nature and rejects hypocrisy. It draws from influences like Nietzsche, Rand, and social Darwinism filtered through LaVey's theatrical lens. Interesting. But yeah, can't say that seems like it would lead to a very fulfilling life on its
No,
own.
and what's so funny is that, I think that from a Christian perspective, you can say that this isn't, like devil worship. But again, Satan doesn't scare people, he seduces. And there is a
Yeah.
seductive element to that, you know, this idea of seeking power and rejecting weakness, or looking down on weakness,
Yes.
versus assisting the weak or helping the weak, or providing any kind of comfort or love to the weak and stuff. It's
Yeah.
interesting. It's interesting.
It's
But
interesting too that, I mean, like Jayne Mansfield, LaVey was kind of a character,
yeah,
you know?
okay. This is
Right?
why I love our conversations. You just made that connection, and I'm like, doo doo doo, didn't even see it. Yeah, they were almost two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, she was living it out. She rejecting weakness, seeking power, seeking stardom, seeking fame, sacrificing her own kids, and sacrificing love. Like she had, Mickey Hargitay fucking loved her. He loved her to the day he died. You know? He every time she was in a jam and she would call him up long after they had split up, he would come to her aid. Like that guy, Marishka's got a solid fucking dad. I don't think he's alive anymore, but she's got a solid fucking father. He loved her mother so much, and would always come to her aid, and then she would, get his aid and then send him packing again.
Yeah, it so tracks with having being the child of a narcissist, if her mother was, to sort of have this kind of, like I see her as trying to find a place where she doesn't get too caught up in relationships with humans. Like, right? Like she's trying to exist in the world without, like focusing on work, focusing on her image, and not landing too long in any one relationship, because you sort of learn, there's a lot you learn depending on who your parent is, but you sort of learn that, human relationships are fraught and potentially exploitative, or, when you're raised by a narcissist, like a sense of no such thing as unconditional love. And I can kind of see that in her behavior and her relationships. It wasn't like she was running around with a girl pack, and having
No.
deep relationships with women. And even with her own children, she seemed protective, and like she wanted to keep them, like her chihuahuas, with her.
Right.
But not for, I don't know. I don't know about I don't know. Obviously, I don't know very much about her, but you can just see the echoes of maybe that kind of relationship with her mother in all of this. Don't get too close.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's interesting too because Martha Saxton, I think I'm pretty sure Vera and Harry Piers, her parents, are long dead now, but at the time Martha Saxton interviewed them at their home in Texas, and it's interesting because that the house is like almost like a mausoleum to Jayne, and like the front sitting area, or they live sort of in the den, sort of at the back of the house, which is a little more comfortable, and everything else is like this shrine to Jayne. But it's like they have these huge portraits of her, like almost like her celebrity portraits, which I find so interesting. It's almost like they bought into the hype as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Or that's all.
Of
Yeah.
her stardom. And again, relationships are complicated. I'm sure Vera loved Jayne very much, but I don't know that, I don't know, like I keep going back to that attitude about
Yeah.
the mink coat, but
What's in it for
also
me? You didn't
when
please
Jayne
me.
died, Vera was going through the Pink Palace, apparently, according to Matt Simber, and going, well, Jayne, I want this, and I want that, and I want this, like picking through Jayne's things.
Like a vulture.
Yeah. And so I can't help but think that a lot of Jayne's relationship, and I don't know much about the father. I have a feeling that even though Vera and Harry, of course, fulfilled their traditional roles with him working and Vera being at home taking care of things, that Vera very much kind of runs the show. Yeah. She's topping from the bottom, so to speak.
Managing up.
And yeah, exactly. And so, but that had to have informed a lot of the way that Jayne lived her life, the way that she structured her own modeling her mother with her own relationships in one way, but also just needing to be more than she was.
Yeah. And it's just that sort of anxious avoidance kind of thing. Like, just maybe not wanting to get it. Like, it seemed like she kind of was skipping around, trying to, I wonder, it's like seeking stardom. It's like the influencer thing we had talked about, it's like you're seeking something there, right? And it's so fleeting. And that was her focus, was like, in a way, my fantasy is that it's like, I'm going to find a place to land where I finally feel okay. like I finally feel loved. I finally feel seen. I finally feel appreciated, right? But it's always like it's work, and it's not stable. It doesn't last forever, right? I mean, we know that with celebrity comes the other side where you get critiqued and all that. But you know, just sort of pursuing that over sort of landing in a loving relationship, right?
Yeah.
And maybe landing in not landing. I mean, I think that happens with a lot of kids of narcissists. It's like there's just this sort of avoidant style. It's like, why would you want to have, if you grew up in an environment like that where you're being, you know, you're never good enough. Potentially that could be the case. The mink coat thing is a good example, but and you're being used basically by your parent. Like, it's not very appealing, you know, to think about. I think there's a lot of avoidance of intimacy and contact and real connection.
And I'm under the impression that, you know, Jayne still to the end was seeking her mother's approval. And I
Yeah.
have a feeling she never got it.
Yeah.
She was never going to get the approval. She was constantly trying and trying and trying. And when anytime she was human, like fucking around and getting pregnant,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I we'll never know how Vera actually reacted to that news.
Yeah. It's so
We'll
sad.
never know.
So
Yeah.
yes, everybody, if you're in a relationship with somebody who's a narcissist, you are not going to get their approval.
Yeah,
You
it's
won't.
never going to happen. Yeah, if Jayne Mansfield couldn't get her mother's approval, that should tell you something. Get out of that narcissistic relationship now.
Yeah, if you can.
But yeah, so Jayne, it's for me, Jayne Mansfield's story is one that I find so fascinating in for so many reasons. You know, just there's the bizarre aspect of her being this caricature of a woman, you know, of almost making being a woman a joke, but at the same time taking that caricature and leveraging it for power
Yeah.
at a time when women she was a single mother.
Without conflict, like without the conflict that Marilyn Monroe had about it, right? Like,
Yeah,
just working it, like seeing it and working it, and not living this sort of, you know.
yeah, she did not personalize it at all.
Yeah.
Like she understood that it was marketing and branding.
It's
And that
pragmatic.
yeah, she was incredibly pragmatic, very very savvy. She understood visual messaging. She was shaping her narrative in a way that was ahead of its time for the 1950s, you know. And then yeah, just wondering who she was. I mean, we get bits and pieces through we can kind of try to understand just through what we know about her relationship with her parents, her relationship with her husbands and boyfriends, her relationship with her children. And then just the kind of weird contradictory things like she lived in a fucking dollhouse, dude.
Yeah.
She lived in a dollhouse. And I'm so mad they tore it down. That should have been a landmark. Like on my 30th birthday, I went to her house at 10100 Sunset Boulevard, and I looked through the gates at what I could see of her house. And that was shortly before it was torn down. And I'm so bummed about that because, like, what a bizarre place. Engelbert Humperdinck bought it, and he changed it. You know, he changed some things. He left a lot the way it was, but he, like, obviously got rid of the heart-shaped bathtubs and stuff like that. But she just lived a fucking wild and crazy life, and she was ahead of her time. And I just feel like she was on the cutting edge of marketing and branding long before it became absolutely just a necessity today. She was an influencer before influencers. Like she had her brand was pink and hearts. She had her trademark blonde hair. She everything was going to be pink. That was her brand. You know, Marilyn Monroe didn't have a Marilyn was Marilyn. But Jayne was like, this is how I'm going to do it, because she didn't have like the love of the studios. She was going to get out there. She was calling the papers. She was staging publicity stunts long before people were doing that. Like today, TMZ would love her. TMZ would love her chaos. Like
Yeah.
she would be calling Backgrid. They'd be like, it's Jayne again. You know, she'd be on Backgrid. Like she would be a huge star on TikTok and Instagram. So it's just interesting to look back on that. And then the way she died, by the way, here's more of her kind of legacy. There is a bar now you'll see on the back of like semis, and they call it a Mansfield bar. And that's to keep, you know, sedans or smaller cars from getting up underneath and having like the hood of the roof of the car like sheared off. Her accident is the reason why that exists now. And there's an incredible probably my favorite song by Susie and the Banshees. Susie wrote for her called "Kiss Them for Me," which is the name of actually a catastrophic movie that actually signaled her downfall in movies. It was a movie called "Kiss Them for Me" that Jayne starred in. And it's called "Kiss Them for Me," and it is really haunting. It's such a great song. It was their one song that actually got the highest on the charts, which is interesting.
I did not know that was written about her.
Oh, it's such a great song.
It makes it even more. It's poignant and sad.
It's incredibly poignant. There's a line in there, someone carving their devotion in the heart-shaped pool of fame, because Mickey Hargitay carved "I Love You, Jayne" to the bottom of the pool.
Oh my God, heartbreaking.
I know, and just like it's morbid, it's dark, that has like a yearning to it.
Yeah.
There's a line in there, nothing or no one will ever make me let you down, which feels like something Mickey would have said to her.
Yeah.
You know, it's really,
Wow.
it's such a great song. I would love to hear it stripped down and sung by Fiona Apple.
Oh yeah.
I would love Fiona Apple. I've said this a million times. I would love Fiona Apple to cover that song in like this really kind of stripped down way. But yeah, that is a big departure from our Gabriel Fernandez episode. This one was kind of fun and also morbid, dark, but also oddly pink and fluffy.
This one had pink.
This one was pink and fluffy and also grotesque and frightening. Like Jayne had it all, man.
Yeah.
I fucking love her. I love Jayne Mansfield. I just, yeah. If Marilyn was ethereal and angelic, Jayne was just fucking kind of dark. And which is not to say that Marilyn didn't have darkness in her life, but Jayne was just, she was the worker bee, man. She was just trudging. She was fucking Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the fucking hill.
Determined.
You know, determined and just unflappable. She was gonna keep fucking trying. You know. So
I love her too now.
yeah. And you've got to watch the Wild Wild. You can kind of speed through it a little bit, but just you'll really get a sense of her. She's so strange.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm gonna watch it tonight now that everybody's gone and I'm gonna have my me time.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's our episode on Jayne Mansfield. I hope it wasn't too disjointed. I get so excited and just had so much in my head. I was like trying to get through everything.
That was great. It was great. I feel like I learned a lot, and I'm gonna go learn more.
Oh yeah.
So
All right, gang.
follow
Thank you
us.
for listening. Follow us. Yes.
Follow us if you can on Instagram at Secret Passage Podcast and X at Secret Pass Pod. And we will. Oh, that was Poochie saying goodbye. Was it Poochie?
Yes, it sure was. It's always Poochie.
All right. See you next week.
Yes.